I now declare open this public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters. I appear today on the lands of the Yugambeh people, with other members appearing remotely from various locations. I acknowledge the nations on whose lands we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their cultural and recognise their cultural and spiritual connections to Australia's lands and waters. I now welcome a representative from the Department of Education, Far North Queensland region. Thank you for appearing today. For the benefit of Hansard, can you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear today?
My name is Brooke Byers. I'm the Head of Department of Humanities and Business at Warrie State High School.
Thank you, Brooke. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standing as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Brooke, did you want to make an opening statement, or are we going to, would you rather we just have a discussion?
Happy to have a discussion.
Great. Well, thank you very much for appearing today. We've been and are looking into civics and civics education and people's experience of that, particularly young people's experience, barriers people might face to participating in our democracy and our elections. So we did have the privilege this morning of visiting Trinity Bay State School and talking to some of the Year 9 and 10 students there about their experience in civics, but really interested to hear from you, from your perspective as a teacher and someone who obviously leads a humanities program, about what civics education looks like and where you think we can improve it. So if I can start you, if you could tell us about what civics education looks like in the school that you work in.
Yes, definitely. Just to give you a little bit of context, Warrie State High School is on the south side of Cairns, about 800 students. We're quite a low socioeconomic school, probably one of the lowest socioeconomic schools throughout our state. We have about a 46% Indigenous population as well. We have a lot of teachers who've been teaching our school for a very long time, but then is also very supportive of many beginning teachers as well. When I came to Warrie, I was very of the understanding that civics and citizenship is just really ensuring that students are contributing members to society and also ensuring that they're aware of what's going on. And as an example of a concern, or I guess a challenge I have, is a starter activity I do in every single lesson is, what is the top trending news article of today? Now, students have got no idea what's going on in the world in which we live. And I just thought I'd open with that because civics and citizenship is the world in which we live. So is a lot of the humanities subjects we teach. One of the other ones I guess I could compare to is economics and business. So economics and business and civics and citizenship receives the same weighting across our humanities curriculum. So for us at Warrie, history and geography in the junior school receive a higher weighting. So if I was to make a comparison, history is linked with civics and citizenship in that students will do 2 lessons a week of history, 1 lesson of civics and citizenship. Geography, 2 lessons, 1 lesson of economics and business. There's an issue already. 1 lesson a week. How are we going to get through Australian curriculum? How are we going to inspire students in 1 lesson? So coming back to, do students actually know what's happening in the world around us? Not really. They know what's happening on their phones. They know what's happening on social media. I grew up, so I'm from Brisbane. I'm a 88 baby, so I grew up, I watched the news. And I watched the news with my family. I got ready for school with the news on. And I've followed that path. I still watch the news in the morning. Even take back 2 years, I've got a sister who's 2 years younger than me, and she's studying social work at the moment. I said, do you watch the news? Do you know what's going on? No, I don't trust the news. I'm like, well, ABC, do you watch any other, what's going on in the world apart from what's going on your phone? And it's interesting to see that almost generation shift already. And I don't think conversations are happening in the household around what goes on in our world. I don't think discussions are happening. I think discussions are happening hidden behind phones. Discussions are definitely happening in the school, though. Teachers are passionate about civics and citizenship, so that's definitely not a barrier. There are many definitions and terms in the civics and citizenship curriculum that are very foreign to our students. I don't have the understanding from the primary school as to what that looks like in a primary school setting, only from my own background. But when students come to year 7 and we're floating like, what does it look like for you to be an active member of society? They've really got to think about that. And if they've come from, and I relate this to the students that we work with at our school, but if they've come from really troubled backgrounds, trauma backgrounds, or just different values to what I have in my own family, there's a whole discussion just there. And if that's only then happening once a week, we've almost got to take a little step back. And I was kind of, in my thoughts around what I wanted to present today, I was going back through our curriculum documents, because we're in the process of aligning all of our curriculum from version 8.4 of the Australian curriculum to version 9. Priority was around history, geography, and bringing civics and citizenship. And it's exciting that we get to make adjustments and changes. But if I look back at in the year 7 curriculum, we're talking about systems of government, characteristics of Australian democracy. Like, I've really got to take that back a notch. They're phenomenal topics that our students need to be aware of, but I don't believe we're hitting a high standard, because we're having to go back to like the basics of what does it mean to be an active member of society. What are the pros and cons of that? How does even to have a conversation of how does your family participate? Who is our Prime Minister? I'd love to have that conversation in detail. That would be quite interesting. The kids love to unpack this. They really, really do. But again, it's that we've got one lesson. In the grand scheme of things, we've got one lesson. We are making some changes to our timetable next year, in that we can then run civics and citizenship over a period of time. I think that will see success. We'll have some great success stories there with doing that. But again, it still doesn't have the same weighting as history, geography, where it's probably just as important. I did want to share a story from the flips. I know that's kind of been in that junior space. We just brought our year 11 and 12 legal studies students into the courts on Monday. And it was one of the most humbling experiences I've ever had as a teacher, to see. So we went to the Cairns District Courts, and there was quite a high-profile case that was meant to happen on Monday, and it was adjourned. Every single lawyer, solicitor, barrister took time to say hello to every single student, introduce themselves. The judges, they all took time. They got to see some phenomenal cases, and they all left so humbled by how the judge treated the person at the courtroom. And we all left very reminded that the legal system, civics and citizenship, is about people. It's about people. It's their contribution to society, and what the students were able to very clearly see is someone might have done wrong, but if they have made improvements, how that person was treated, and how beautifully they were spoken to. It was just a very humbling experience. And I then started to backward map that and to go, goodness me, what can we then do for our 7s, 8s and 9s to really hook them in? What what does it take? And as one of the Crown barristers actually was so inspired by our student, she's like, what do I need to do? I'll come out and speak to your senior legal studies. Like, how can I be involved? I was like, oh my goodness. So it's amazing how those conversations can start creating some traction in the community. We have a phenomenal Year 10 cohort. We actually we call it Justice and Power as a subject. It's called just the Year 10 JPO, and it is such a popular subject. It's not called Civics and Citizenship. It's obviously still mapped to the curriculum for Year 10, but everyone wants to do JPO. And potentially in their heads they're thinking, oh, I want to be a police officer, or I want to work in my community. Maybe in Year 10 there's a little bit of a link there, but I believe in Year 10, I think something has clicked in their brains to go, oh, I actually want to contribute to my society. How do I contribute? So for me, in my role, I am wanting to do some additional work in what does that look like for the junior school in 7, 8, 9, when we only, I guess, are afforded from time perspective is one lesson a week. What can we do better? Everything is there, but how can we relate that? How can we make it relatable for students who are a very different generation of student to how we grew up, and probably even, even from a couple of years ago, it's probably even different. I think the student we're working with at the moment is a very, very different student. And I look, everything is there in the curriculum, but if we don't make it relatable, it's just another, oh, okay, we're going to learn about the legal system today. I said, well, what is that? What does that do? So,
Brooke, thank you. There was so much in what you said, and what is really clear is your passion for this, which I love, because it is obviously something I'm passionate about and Darren's passionate about, and there's a lot of things I want to pick up and talk
absolutely.
to you more about in that. And I might start with that point you were making about the time challenges you have with just having one civic session, and then how that then, particularly when you're dealing with students from different backgrounds and you're trying to have values discussions, makes it really hard to have those in a engaging and meaningful way. Because one of the things we've heard from other teachers and people in this space is that part of the challenge for teachers when it comes to discussing civics at the moment is that students often really are passionate about issues, but then relating that to a structure of what government and things look like is really tricky. And part of the challenge teachers have in doing that is when they're having those discussions, they're really aware of not trying to appear to be too political,
Yes.
Because they feel like if they step even a little bit over a line, they're suddenly going to have many parents, community members saying to them, hey, you're not meant to be teaching my kids a point of view, you're meant to be teaching them facts. Is that a challenge that you find?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it probably, some teachers then don't have those conversations because they're afraid of crossing the line. Particularly in year 8 and 9, not so much year 7. Year 7, I still think they're very much still babies. They've come across from primary school and they still very much see the teacher as, the authority figure in the room. So I guess they probably don't challenge as much. But I think when you get into year 8 and 9, the teacher and the student are almost then, like in this particular subject, they're on the same playing field if you want to have a real discussion. An example in particular is around, I'm going to say, like with race. In a school we have 48% Indigenous students. 46. Very multicultural, and I'm the white blonde person in the room. But how I've overcome that is we're all here. We're all equally same here. We're going to have some really great discussions. We're going to be honest with each other. We're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about this. And I think it's having that conversation straight up. There might be conversations here, or there might be topics that you're unsure about, that you want to challenge. Please do, because this is the safe space to do it. Not over social media. Maybe you may not feel comfortable at home, but in a classroom setting, this is the absolute safe space to have a conversation, whether it's about laws, discrimination, racism. I remember the very first day I started teaching, I asked an Indigenous student to take their hat off. They said, "Oh, you just did that because I'm black, isn't it?" And I said, and I repeated, I just said, can I honestly ask, did you say that to me because I'm white? But then from that moment, we're on a level playing field, and we've had, you know, some phenomenal conversations. So I think in civics and citizenship then too, it's not so much the content, it is skills. What skills do students need to be active citizens in the world we live right now? But that is, teachers need to be confident to have that conversation. I could most certainly trust my civics and citizenship teachers to have those conversations. However, they might have their own biases. They might have their own prejudices against certain topics. But I think it's going in with that conversation to say, hey, there might be some conversations here that don't sit right. But we're in a safe place here in this classroom. We want to talk it out as citizens in this world. From a flip side, when I teach economics and business, you know, we're working in that space as consumers, as producers. We're working in the space as if we were running a business. So I think it's then changing our terminology. And it's like, we're working in the community here. We're all different. That's perfect. That is okay. That's acceptable. So I think it's, we have space as teachers to create a more welcoming space. But then we have that flip side of students have just come from 2 lessons of this, they've come from HB, right, okay, let's come into this space, we're now going to talk about ... I think that by exposing students to more, we'll have those enriching conversations. Is that going to come from the curriculum? Yes, of course, the achievement standards come from the curriculum as to how we will assess. However, I think the important notion to civics and citizenship, particularly for my school, is contextualising. So what does that look like for our school? What does that look like for our community? So what does that look like for Cairns? And that could be absolutely replicated across, how you say you went to Darwin. What does that look like for Darwin? What does that look like for the world around them? Because that's what they're exposed to. When we teach tourism, so I do Certificate 2 in tourism, students don't know much about what's happening outside of Cairns. If I speak about what is an event that is happening at the moment that is causing media attention, and they said the Cairns show. I was like, what about the Olympics? You know, it's very very, very tunnel vision. So I think sometimes as teachers we need to step back and realise who we're working with. The same when we work with social and community studies, again, it's another fantastic subject in senior that absolutely has civics and citizenship tied into it. What I do like about their curriculum is everything comes back to the community. They're very heavy on, please contextualise your assessments to your community.
So just on that point, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no, please.
The opportunity to embed civics and citizenship into other lessons strikes me as something we should be looking at, because expecting a student to come from one subject and so now it's all about how you be an engaged member of your community. You've got to switch their brains to something completely different. If it was part of history and geography and other things, this is what it's like being an active member of the community.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
How would you embed that and making it real to them would be interesting. It would be challenging, I would have thought. But I guess my question is around when you have a cohort of students, a lot from disadvantaged backgrounds, some of them would have more pressing needs in their own life than, how do I become a good member of community? They've got, how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you balance that out? I guess to make it real to them, I guess.
It is hard. Some of our students may have not had breakfast that day, or they've been up getting their siblings to school. and then, you know, we come in and say, right, we're talking about...
Well, for example, a student whose parents are involved in a Lions Club or Surf Lifesaving Club kind of gets straight away that you can be part of the community and volunteer. But if a student hasn't seen that sort of role model, how does the school... Is it the school's role to fill in that gap somehow with the curriculum?
I believe it is for us. We have a bit of a saying at Warrior, and this is probably many teachers say this, but if a student doesn't know something, our job is to teach. So if, you know, a student can't write, we don't get them in trouble. It's our job is to teach them to write. Or if, you know, someone can't ride a bike, we teach them. So coming back to the skill element, I loved your point, Darren, around if a role model is not present in a child's life, say around volunteering. I mean, that was very important for me as a value growing up. If that didn't exist, if that notion of volunteering at a time does not exist, how do they develop that skill? It's completely non-existent. In school, I believe very much at our school, and look, I would say at many schools, there's so many opportunities that we can get our kids doing more, absolutely doing more. For quite a few years, if you asked a student to do something that was outside of school time, outside of their free time, outside of anything, they'll go, well, what's in it for me? I'll do something for you, but what do I get out of it? Do I get food? Do I get a Macca's? Do I get a Macca's voucher? It's always, what do I get out of it? It's
universal currency.
That's right.
It is a Macca's voucher. I get a Macca's voucher and you'll move mountains. But again, it's being an active member of society. If students don't know what that looks like, we really can't get them to buy into it unless it's modelled. We had recently, so Cairns does a fantastic Eco-Fest, and we created our own version. You might, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak to it in this context, but we have a Warrior Youth Advisory Committee.
Please do talk about that. That's exactly the kind of thing we're
Great,
here about.
excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to also talk to that as well. So from a student voice perspective, we're a PBL school, which means we're a positive behaviour for learning school. And a really key component to PBL is around capturing student voice. And if you have student voice within your school culture, your community, you have, you know, that mob buy-in, as we call it. And we realised that the notion of student council didn't work anymore. So student council also attracted a certain type of student. They were your beautifully behaved, probably high-performing student, but maybe on the outer a little bit. But how could we get the voice and the buy-in from everyone, from the footy guys, from our Clontarf Foundation members? How do we get buy-in from everyone? So, in collaboration with the Cairns Regional Council, we created the Warrior Youth Advisory Committee called WIAC, and it's a direct student voice link back to Cairns Regional Council, which is phenomenal. I believe we're the only school in this region with this program. Every term we have a WIAC meeting, but in addition to that, our student council has moulded into WIAC. So we have a student-led meeting in week 4, which is next week, and then we have the community-based meeting.
How do they get on the council?
Turn up. So no elections anymore. So we used to, I remember when I first started teaching, it was one person from every 4 member, and they had to get elected, and then they didn't show up. Then it was like, oh, whatever, that's not working. Let's just, you're in. You turn up. You look like you'll help me, right? You're in. Now it's like, if you have something to say, come and say it. If I hear, oh, the tuck shop needs more food options, great, come along here. Oh, we need longer tracksuit pants for winter. Great, come and say it. So it's not me. The kids don't want, and to be honest, I used to be the one wanting to drive events. That's probably coming from my previous background. The kids don't care about that. But what do they care about? And our ambassadors of White came to us and said, we want to do an Eco-Fest. I was like, okay, what does that look like?
Yep.
It was student-led. Yes, there's a lot of teachers doing a lot of work in the background. Student-led. It was one of the most successful events I've ever seen.
We've empowered them somehow.
It was phenomenal.
We do have a saying that decisions are made by the people who turn up.
Yeah.
So obviously they're turning up. Can I just one more question, Chair? Sorry, and I don't want to take you off track where you are, but I'm going to take you off track a little bit. You mentioned about skills, and you're at the coalface, literally, on this. How do we make or help students become discerning consumers of media? How do we give them the skills? Because the digital age has moved so quickly through. These are digital natives. They're not. We had at the school just a couple of hours ago. I asked students put their hands up if anyone reads a newspaper. One student reads a newspaper, and one teacher. Everyone else, they asked them, where's their news coming from? It was TikTok, Instagram, not so much Facebook, you name it. It was
Facebook's for oldies like us.
Yes.
and then I asked them, how did you hear about Donald Trump's assassination attempt? And it was Instagram, TikTok, friends told them something. So how do you give those skills? Is the curriculum keeping up, I guess, around giving them skills to be discerning consumers of modern media, which really goes to the heart of how they know fact from opinion, how they can be active citizens?
I think it comes from...
If you can solve this problem for me, you can probably take over the...
Yeah, absolutely.
We talk about... came from this notion of, it's called universal design for learning. So we have... within the inclusive education model where, all students are afforded the same education. UDL, it was always funny, everyone just thinks of the UDL drink, but universal design for learning is that creating a space where everyone can access the curriculum, everyone inside your classroom. And a component of UDL is, what is that hook the minute the kids are in the room? What is that hook? And I guess I'm thinking if I'm a year 8 civics and citizenship student, I sit in my classroom, and if a teacher says to me, okay, we're going to write, definitions of, if I look, democracy, politics, like if I was like, oh, what, I've got no hang to it. But if someone said to me, right, the hook today is, or not the hook, but did you hear about Donald Trump's assassination? Like, just... Imagine if we could just explore that for 10 minutes. He's like, what? What do you mean?
For the record, attempted assassination?
Sorry, yes. Please take that off. Oh my God. I'm like, what did this teacher say? Attempted assassination. Imagine if the answer is actually, like, it doesn't have to be a hard answer. The answer is just something so simple in that, what is the hook to get kids actually wanting to know more
about news?
Yeah. What is that hook? As soon as you walk in the classroom, it's like, did you hear this? Like, what? I mean, it could even be fake news or something. But it's that. But again, it's teaching that skill of, like, okay, I've just flagged it. I'm going to teach you now to go find that news story, because the other element is kids are very good on their phones. Very, very good on their phones. They'll dig up something on TikTok that you've probably never seen before. However, put a laptop in front of them and ask them to find that article, and that is quite challenging. Okay. The ability to find that information, I think, is another challenge. However, that's a skill we need to be upskilling our students with.
Can I ask on that?
Yes, please.
Do you have specific lessons in digital literacy for students, and what do they look like?
We have a subject called RSK, Research Skills. One lesson a week. It's built into the junior timetable. Around that is digital literacy. We're really starting from basics there. It's saving documents, naming folders, typing skills.
What about, maybe it's more media literacy then. So the idea of being able to judge the reliability of a source, what's the difference between what we would see as a traditional news organisation versus an influencer on TikTok, and how do you sort of weigh up information that you're receiving?
That would be a conversation in the English curriculum. Okay. And again, it is how creative or how knowledgeable the teacher is in that space and how far they want to take that. Definitely in the English curriculum. I know in history it's a huge component because it's our source investigation. And whilst it might be the contents around ancient history or deep time history, whatever it might be, we are still looking at, is that source credible? Is that allowing me to find the information I need? The other component to this, though, is there's almost too much information out there.
Yes.
And there's too much information and students actually don't know what to do with that or where to look. We speak a lot of the time around inquiry questions. So really ensuring that you have a strong inquiry question to do your research so that you get a better response out of that. But that, again, it takes time. Within the curriculum, we map 7 to 10, so there's a streamlined approach. And so, in inquiry questions, we most certainly map that across. But it comes down to the skills. That's our job. It's not coming, I don't think it's there yet from primary school.
Yeah.
Year 7s, we're still, we're getting to that process. Our school is, I think it's by 2027, we'll all be on laptops. So it's an ongoing process, which is amazing. We've got that many.
You mentioned before, because a lot of year 10s, something sort of switches and they start becoming conscious of a community. How does that work? I mean, how do they suddenly start understanding that they're part of something bigger than themselves, they're part of a community? Do you think the students understand how the community works?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't think a student would ever, year 7, 8 or 9, would go, someone has just come to collect our rubbish. How's that work? Like, I don't think that happens at all. I think there's something that happens in year 10 when jobs start, potentially around how do I get to work? If I don't show up to my shift, but I also think the impact is then when something happens to them. Cairns crime rates, that has probably been the biggest discussion for students, because if something has happened to someone they know, they want to talk about it. And then it's like an immediate. So unless something has happened, they're not exactly sure how it links or how it's important to them. Potentially those conversations aren't happening at home. We do want to facilitate them in the classroom, but unless you get that aha moment, I think we're still very transactional in our education. I think the important aspects around contextualising, really contextualising and getting that hook for them to want to, it's like, I want to know about that.
So this passion you have and the ability you have to contextualise it and to have these difficult conversations which you've really set out for us, do you think that's something that you're equipped to do through your teacher training, or is it something that you've brought from somewhere else? I'm interested if other teachers would be able to do this work in the same way.
I think it's come from the fact that I've had a second career, for a previous career. I probably think a little bit differently and have been exposed to another world and how different people think. I do believe, though, that this inspiration can be achieved through maybe teachers working in smaller teams and really going, how can we bring life to a subject that we want kids to buy into? I can do that with small groups, but if I was at another school, like what does that look like? If someone prioritises something else, that subject still sits there. So I think it's having subject experts, and really we speak quite passionately about having a team leader on each subject. So someone who's very, very passionate, someone who wants to see change. They're the leader of that subject. So their responsibility is kind of then to inspire that teaching team, re-engaging resources. We're fortunate here in Cairns is that we're quite an active community. Everyone tends to know what's going on in the community. We then wonder say a bigger city, Melbourne, what does that look like? Do kids know, or is it too far removed? Do they know what's happening up in Cairns? And I as a flip side again, I do a little bit of lecturing for CQU, so Central Queensland University, and it's interesting when you do mark assignments as well to see where thoughts and opinions have come from depending on where people are located. I find that people who live in Cairns who've written assignments, they're quite contextualised. I find any assignments that are written from bigger cities are broader, particularly if it's on a topic, say, of Indigenous education or what it might be, special education. I find it is a little bit broader. So I find by having that really specific contextualisation allows that kind of passion to be brought in. But I think it'd be different on every playing field there. But I think, imagine what you could do if you had the same weighting as history, geography. Under humanities with the 4 learning areas, there's
So if we give civics the same weighting as those
it's you could say the same then for economics and business.
It's certainly
Economics
something
and
we've heard from other
businesses.
people as well, Brooke, that civics isn't given the weighting it should in the curriculum.
And just from what I saw in the courts on Monday, if you could replicate that passion, it's not going to happen in one lesson a week.
I'll keep going. I could keep going.
I know. And I could as well. It's been a really valuable discussion.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your attendance today and for sharing this information with the committee. I'll suspend our hearing while we bring our next witnesses in.
Thank you so much.
I now welcome representatives of the Cairns Youth Council, the Young Mayors. Thank you for appearing today. For the benefit of the Hansard, would you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear? We'll start here.
I'm Antonio Dimitrievich. I am the Mayor of the Cairns Youth Council.
Thanks, Antonio.
I'm Sophia Horn. I'm the Deputy Secretary of the Cairns Youth Council.
I'm Aidan Senaratna. I'm the Deputy Spokesperson of the Youth Council.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standing as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Did any of you have an opening statement you wanted to make before we go to questions?
Yes, we have.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. As members of the Cairns Youth Council, we welcome the opportunity to speak to the inquiry into civics, education, engagement and participation in Australia on behalf of the broader Cairns youth and young people living in Cairns. The Cairns Youth Council was established in 2023 as a partnership between the Cairns Regional Council and the Foundation for Young Australians. Our council is made up of 12 young people, aged 13 to 17, who live in the Cairns local government area. We are currently serving an 18-month term as the elected representatives of young people in the region, ensuring that they have a voice in decision-making, both at the Cairns Regional Council and when decisions that impact the lives of young people in the region are made. The members of the Cairns Youth Council were selected through a democratic election with over 3,500 of our peers taking the opportunity to vote in the region's first ever Youth Council election, and that was in November 2023. For the purpose of this inquiry, we would like to share our reflections on our experience, both with formal HAS and civics and citizenship education, as well as with the Young Mayors program and the impact that both have had on our understanding of and ability to engage with civic life in Australia. To support this statement, we ask that members of the Youth Council share their reflections on their civic education and the Young Mayors program. Due to the time frame, a small group was able to provide feedback, but most have had a chance to review this statement.
Despite having spent up to 11 years engaging with the HAS and civics and citizenship curriculum, some of us have reflected that we didn't have a deep understanding of how elections or our country's government system work before becoming involved in the Young Mayors program. Some factors we feel have contributed to this include formal education in civics is focused primarily on learning general history, Australian colonial history, geography, the history of democracy, political structures, and international systems of government and ideologies. Democracy was taught near the end of primary school, while politics and government was a brief unit taught in the elective legal studies. We felt that many young people in our networks may have forgotten what was learned by the time they reached voting age. The impact of this was highlighted when one of our fellow youth councillors recalled that both of their older siblings had been fined because they did not enroll to vote after turning 18, likely due to not receiving adequate education. The youth councillors who shared their reflections agreed that beyond the basics of the democratic system, students were not taught in detail how to vote and did not feel properly equipped to independently evaluate campaign materials or decide who to vote for. Some of us felt there was too much emphasis placed on international political systems and ideologies, with little time spent on Australia's political system, and the maths and science were valued more highly than civics. Some things we would like to see change in our formal education include an overall greater emphasis on humanities and Australia's political history, inclusion of more in-depth information about voting, including the process of voting, how to register to vote, and the legal requirements of voting. More focus on Australia's political system, parties, politics, and how our government is set up, expanding focus on humanities in general. When discussing civics learning outside of the classroom, opportunities highlighted by members of the Youth Council included studying legal studies at a senior level, attending the recent regional sitting of Queensland Parliament, participation in YMCA Queensland Youth Parliament, and conversations with like-minded peers. News media and conversations with parents also came up. One of the youth councillors shared an experience in primary school of visiting Canberra to reinforce their learning about democracy and participating in a mock election with an electoral commission, which was valuable. However, this experience was not shared across the schools. This process of nominating, campaigning, and voting as part of the Cairns Youth Council was also highlighted. It is important to note that these are not universal opportunities and are often taken up by academic students who are already engaged in civics. These activities are also often extracurricular, elective senior subjects, or optional additional experiences, meaning that students never experience them.
We also asked the youth councillors how their experience of the Young Mayors program and the Cairns Youth Council informed their understanding of civics, and members highlighted a practical experience. Campaigning workshops gave us a deeper understanding of the process of campaigning. One youth councillor reflected that they now recognise the campaigning approaches and messages of politicians, which helps them in interpreting them. Being a part of the program has helped us to understand how the levels of government work together and the functions of a council, what departments do, and how it is not just a mayor and the councillors. We have also learned about the interconnection between government and civic organisations. Another significant part of the experience was gaining practical understanding of how voting works and how to enrol to vote. Through this voting experience, students and young people across Cairns were able to put into practice what they had learned about civics until that point and vote in a real election with real candidates. The program also allowed us to connect and have meaningful conversations with our peers, both other candidates and constituents, on important topics, giving us a clearer understanding of the makeup, needs, and diversity of our community. The Youth Council have also had several opportunities to connect with and build relationships with the Cairns Regional Council Mayor and councillors. One event that came up that was particularly meaningful was attending the new council's Declaration of Office event, where we heard each of the councillors speak about their role as councillors and what was important to them and what had motivated them in their decision to run for council. These opportunities to meet and hear the councillors speak humanised them and allowed us to understand their role as local elected members, along with their priorities for our city. This gave us the confidence to approach elected leaders to advocate for the things that are important to us as youth councillors and members of the community.
If we could ask for three things, we would improve civic participation among young people. They would be the opportunity to engage in practical learning about modern Australian politics in secondary school as part of a course subject that is available to all students. This should cover practical information about the three tiers of government and their roles in modern Australia, elections, campaigning, voters' rights at the polls, and the process of voting. The second one would be more universal opportunities for civic engagement and civic learning, and expanding some of the programs mentioned, such as the Young Mayors program, as well as exposure to things like the sitting of the Regional Parliament and the YMCA Queensland Youth Parliament. The third one would be opportunities for young people to participate in practical experiences of voting, particularly in the later years of high school. For example, the Electoral Commission running mock elections in schools.
Thank you all. What a really
Our work's done.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I think you've just given us some recommendations that are really going to help us put together our work. And in fact, they're what young people, through some other inquiries, the hearings that we've had have told us as well. So thank you for the thoroughness that you've put into bringing that. You've also shown that you're great representatives by going out to your members and bringing all that to us. I'm going to ask you a few questions about some of that. You mentioned in terms of the opportunities to be involved in programs like Young Mayors and how valuable that is, but you also mentioned, Aidan, about how these types of programs do tend to attract students who are already engaged or already have a bit of extra capacity to put their hand up and say, yeah, I think that sounds interesting. What made all of you decide that you wanted to be part of the program? What was your motivation?
Well, personally, nothing in particular. I received a brochure during a jobs fair, and I was at home and it was sitting on my table and I was looking at it, and it was probably like 9 p.m. and I was wondering, like, why not? And it was like the last day that before submissions were closed. So I put in my submission and I got through, and since then I am very, very grateful that I did that, because this has been an amazing opportunity. And yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it wasn't something that you'd been thinking, oh, I'm really interested, or?
Not really. Not really.
Yep, thank you. How about for you, Sophia?
Okay, I suppose as like cliche as it sounds, but I feel like my upbringing has made me want to make a difference, do my best, play my part in society.
Absolutely not a cliche. That is very
Community.
important.
So when I heard about this program and always being involved in every leadership thing at school, I was like, wow, this is really an opportunity to do my bit for the community on another level in a very new program, and kind of just was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. It was actually Shalane. She was the one that was like, I remember you at this other leadership thing that I was at and got to be a part of. And so, yeah, I suppose that's why. Just wanted to be a part of something that was serving the community.
And Aidan?
For me, it was not only about having the title of being a leader, but it's also the chance to represent others, because I feel like the youth don't really have as much say-so as adults do, particularly, and it's also important because lots of them are not only locally, but they're from all around the world, and there's much insight into that. And then it's also being in a leadership position, you can have your own experiences and own thoughts and what you want to do, but it's based on representing the wider community, which I really enjoy doing.
All right, thank you all. Your third point was around giving people practical experience of voting when they're close to that period of actually having to do it when they turn 18. And we've heard from a few people now that the way we set out civics education means that you learn a bit in primary school and start to get engaged there. You do quite a bit in the early years of high school, and then you start to specialise. You might choose to take legal studies, in which case you'll keep doing it. But if you're not doing that, you're not really doing any civics education right at that point, just before you're about to vote. Is that your experience?
Yeah, well, I definitely remember we learned a lot about the parliament and democracy near the end of primary school, so that was year 5 and 6. But I really don't recall learning much about any of that stuff after that. We touched in legal studies on the 3 arms of the government, but nothing beyond that. And in terms of practical things, we did 2 practical voting things. The first one was in year 6 when we went to Canberra as part of a school trip, and that was to reinforce what we had learnt so far as part of the civics curriculum in our school. And during that, we had a mock election, mock voting inside of the old Parliament building, and that was very entertaining, and a lot of people learnt a lot from that. But since, of course, it was in year 6, since then they've forgotten. And then the second one was for the Young Mayors program, when we had voting across Cairns. It was in a lot of the big schools, so we had quite a lot of students come out to vote, and it was the authentic experience. So the voting system was designed by the Electoral Commission, and it was preferential voting, and it was fully authentic booths, and students, even especially in year 11 and 12, where it's most important, students were able to go up and vote in that mock election, and it basically mirrors what would happen in real life.
So do you think for students who aren't as engaged as you are and choosing to participate in projects like the Young Mayor, do you think they might, or they are feeling a bit intimidated when it comes to voting at 18, that they're thinking, I don't know what to do here, but I have to do it?
I think so, especially when we were putting our statement together and talking about everything that we've been exposed to and taught, we really, we circled back to the fact that we're not taught about the difference between the parties and what they represent and the different political ideologies that you can align yourself with and your beliefs and things like that, and even the difference between above the line voting and below the line voting. So I feel like turning 18 and being like, okay, now you have to vote, and you've only ever had to vote for your school captains and things like that, and that doesn't really like reach the scale of voting for the people representing your country. I feel like it would be very intimidating.
So outside of school, outside the formal part you do in school, are there other parts where you think young people get information about how our democracy and our politics works? Like, if, you know, I'm going to presume that all of you are on social media and get, you know, information from there, because we all do these days, as well as from news sources. When you're looking at content on TikTok, is there a democracy stream? I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know.
I wouldn't say so. I feel like outside of school there isn't as much opportunity to learn about democracies, political ideologies, and just civics in general. On social media, there isn't much display. Like once in a while, there might be something relating to it. It's usually based on news or current events going on, but that doesn't really teach students about it. It's just informing them of what's currently going on and the processes of what's happening. It's not actually providing information of what they need to do when they get to the requirement age of voting.
So if we were trying to reach people outside of school, if we were trying to say, you're about to turn 18, here's how you vote, here's why it's important, is social media a good way for us to try and reach people?
Yeah, I think so. As Aidan said, on social media you can find all sorts of political content, but nothing that actually explains how democracy works. I mean, there will be something, but nothing that really pops up on your page. So I think it would be a good way to put something out there, so at least there's just like not nothing there, but there is something. And I think quite a few young people would actually take the opportunity to have a look at that, especially since it's in a medium that interests them, social media.
I think you might have to recruit some of you guys to be democracy influencers. That can be your next job. Yeah.
Sophia, you said something in your opening comments, and you apologised for it, about wanting to make a difference, which struck a chord with me personally. It was my first campaign slogan, actually, with making a difference. Do you think young people have the skills or the understanding of how the community works, if they see something broken and they want to make a difference, how they go about it, which to me is probably the core of civics and citizenship, is about something in your community is not right, how do I change it? Do you think we're giving you the skills as a young person through the education system to understand how to do that, or how to be part of something bigger than yourself? I mean, you obviously have it, but how do we spread that?
Probably not, honestly. It's like we're constantly being bombarded with everything that's wrong with our country, or everything that's wrong with the whole world, even everything that's wrong with our bloody planet. So it's like, it's quite paralyzing, having all of these things that are disastrous and terrible and that's going to go wrong, and no one really knows where to start because all of these problems are so large. So I feel like we're not taught, like, what's step one? Like, how do we start? So I suppose another motivation was to join this program as step one, just like one small thing. If we can fix this one small problem in whatever way I can. So yeah, I feel like...
Well, it's quite empowering what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people in the community will say someone should do something about that.
Yeah.
You've decided to be the someones. So is there something you have been able to fix, or have you prioritised your efforts, or have you identified what you want to do with your chances in 18 months in the Young Council?
There were 24 of us to begin with, and all 24 of us had different streams of what we were passionate about and what we wanted to campaign to fix or help or focus on. And now there's 12 of us. We've kind of had to really spend a lot of time discussing what was most important, not only to us, but to everyone else in Cairns. And so we had this one community event where we had an opportunity to engage with a lot of young people. It was very environmental based. And I suppose that speaking to the people that we're at school with and the different communities and demographics that we are exposed to, and hearing what they've said, and it's kind of just what does the majority want? What does the majority need to be fixed in Cairns specifically? And that's kind of how we figured out what the priorities are.
And Aidan, you touched on as well that, I mean, this group, even though you were all very interested in civics and citizenship, you identified that there's knowledge gaps still. I mean, even though you are interested and you're obviously involved in reading the news and community, how come there's still knowledge gaps? Is an education system failure, or is it we're just not talking about these issues enough in our own homes? What do you feel?
I feel like particularly with my current state at home, we talk about the news a lot. I think it's more leaned towards education, because since primary school, all I learnt about was federation, which was the first major step towards civics and citizenship. The next time I was introduced to that was last year in grade 9, and we only went about with basics there. I feel like at that stage we needed to go more in depth about it, because I didn't really know much then. And with civics now, we're learning about, like, internationally. I want to know more about Australia and local, like, what's happening.
And if we're thinking about that first point that you gave us about how do we make civics education practical, one of the things we've heard from some of the people who in fact teach the teachers how to teach civics, is that sometimes teachers can feel a bit afraid to have conversations about issues like what is a political party, what does a political party stand for, or to talk about different points of view on a topic, because those teachers are worried that they will be told they're being too political, and that parents and community in particular won't support that. I just wonder if you have any reflections from discussions you've had in classrooms or others about teachers who you think have had an approach, and you don't have to name names, that has made civics education feel relevant, feel like it's something that's connected to your life, and how that discussion took place.
Well, I'm very sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, I went through a few different things there. When the first recommendation you gave us was that in order to make the learning interesting for young people, it needs to be practical. And you also mentioned that you didn't feel like the information you were given really taught you about things like political parties and what they stand for. Have you come across any approaches or teachers when you have been studying civics that have been better at doing that than others? And can you tell us what was different about that approach?
Well, I am definitely a big supporter, as you mentioned, of the practical way to learn about it. So that's, doing a mock election. But another big thing I think is important is is giving students the equipment to find out about these sorts of things themselves in conjunction with stuff you'd be taught in schools. So I think that's definitely an important thing.
Yep.
I feel like I can't think of a teacher that has taught civics in a way that was very helpful to me at all. But I feel like even if we were just told what are the major parties in this country, what do they stand for, in a purely objective way on a PowerPoint slide, this is what they are, this is what they do, this is their main slogan, this is who the people are in there. And then going on what Antonio said was then to give us the tools to further explore that for ourselves, because it would be very difficult to teach different political thoughts and feelings without being too political.
It would be too severe because within the parties themselves, their agendas are contested within the parties.
Yeah.
So that's even harder for the teachers. When we fight amongst ourselves in our own parties about what our...
This is less about us and more about them, though.
But how can you teach it if it's contested?
Yeah, I don't know.
Asking them to vote for us, so we need to have... I think you were introducing a level of complexity here that we...
Yeah, of course. And also when you add the difference in everyone's own moral values and what they feel is important to themselves is going to be very different in a classroom of 30 people. So it's, it would be difficult, but yeah.
Hayden, did you have
With my experience with my current teacher in class, I feel like public opinion really matters in it. Instead of teachers purely teaching fact and trying to teach us what we need to know growing up, having their own opinions and explaining the reasoning behind it is very important, because it also takes out the bias in it, because sometimes with how we're brought up, we're taught to believe in this or see a certain perspective, whereas with an outside perspective, we actually can learn more about it, which might be the best thing for the subject.
And I guess, here's my 2 cents on the soapbox, is that one of the most important parts of a democracy is that we can have all those different views, but we work out ways to have constructive conversations about them and to come to a shared consensus about them as well. Other things that we're really keen to hear from you about, you've talked about the diversity in Cairns as well. So obviously Australia is a big country. People's experiences in different schools in different parts of the country are really different. Do you think that the way we teach civics and help young people understand it reflects that diversity of Australia?
Yeah, well, going into this, I didn't know that different schools take such a different approach into teaching civics. And I really thought we all followed the same one national curriculum and were taught the same things. But no, and some schools seem to have placed the focus on history, geography, and then others place the focus on legal studies and international relations. For example, in my school, I don't recall ever really doing much on anything touching on international relations or much of trade or stuff like that. And we had a bigger focus on geography.
Right, yeah.
Do you find through your involvement in the program that you actually are having a voice in local decision making, or do you feel like you're meeting, but is anyone listening to you?
No, I definitely feel like this is a very productive program. So far, we're up to the stage of planning and deciding how we want to do our projects. So we've placed the focus on 3 different areas that we want to tackle. And near the end of this year, we'll be presenting all of that to members of the Cairns Regional Council. But I definitely do think that this is something that is not like a waste of time or anything like that, but that we can actually put into practice what we want to and what the youth of Cairns want to.
Thus far, we have been networking. I feel like that's what we've been doing.
It's a big part of the political process, yeah.
And how are you balancing, obviously, Kate and I, the chair and I, are paid to do our job. You're volunteering, you've probably got part-time work and study commitments. How's that working out for you? I mean, we're getting you involved in civics and being leaders in your community. How's that working out for you in terms of balancing competing priorities, if you like?
Yeah, it's not an issue for me. I do swimming, I train swimming competitively, and I also, of course, I go to school, but I have no problem with going to meetings once a week with this, because I actually really enjoy it, and it's something I look forward to, and I know we're making a difference through this, and I'm very eager to see the projects that we're planning be put into effect. So I have no issue incorporating this into my schedule.
Yep.
I'm really good at time management now, and I no longer procrastinate anything. No, I do lots of things. I'm very involved in cultural things in my school and in my life, so every moment of my life is accounted for. I feel between school and working and young mayors and music. But because, like Antonio said, it's something I'm passionate about, something I'm very interested in, it's quite easy to balance everything, which means I have purpose in my everyday, which is good.
I feel like having a lot on my plate has helped me have better time management and just better consistency in what I do to put effort in, because I have lots of bands in and out of school I participate in, sport, Young Mayor's program, events I go to, Duke of Ed, all those. It's also helped me just with perspective, just see what I need to focus on. Like, it's also given me the encouragement to like put in the effort, get up every day, help others, and not just focus on myself.
And your classmates happen to be your constituents as well, and you're wanting them to vote for you as it came to pass. Do they come to you? They feel they're able to come and talk to you about issues, or do they email you, or how do they reach out through your involvement in Young Mayors?
Well, most of the time, personally, they interact with me and they ask me, hey, how's the progress on this that you were talking about during campaigning?
Welcome to our world.
Yeah.
They're holding you accountable. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoy that because, as you said, it's being held accountable, and it shows that they actually have interest in the stuff that we're doing, and it shows that it's actually it's stuff that would help them, and that they support that going ahead. So, yeah.
Anyone else get direct feedback from their friendship groups or constituents?
Usually I have to go up to them to get results, just ask them, like, right now we're in our focusing on our priority agenda and just what we want to focus on. I usually have to go up to them and just ask, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or would you prefer we do this to compensate for that, like something?
I feel like people just come up to me and ask me things, ask me how it's going. what we've been up to, what are we focusing on, and then they come to me with their problems. But yeah, being held accountable is really good, and nice to know that people are interested in it, young people as well. And I'm always being asked, when's the next election? How can I get involved in this? Which is really lovely to hear. Yeah.
That's fantastic to hear. Anything else?
Just in terms of resources, about how we would help younger people understand democracy or civics and citizenship, what sort of format should it take? I mean, are you likely to search online if you've got an interest, or has it got to be put in front of you in a classroom? Are there enough resources out there for you to find out what actually is going on?
I really think a brilliant way to teach students about voting and democracy and stuff like that, it was our third point in the recommendation, and it was to have a third party, something, I'm not sure the logistics of it, but maybe like the Electoral Commission. They come into schools, maybe like they come into the year 11, year 12 class, like at the end of the year, once a year, and they do a mock election, and it's fully authentic, fake names, stuff like that, and the students just do that mock election, and it's actually very helpful in teaching, because I've noticed that practical stuff helps you learn a lot more than just learning it on a PowerPoint or out of a book, and it's definitely something that people would remember when they turn 18 and they have to enroll to vote.
I feel like if you're interested and you're looking for the information, you find it. But then it's only the people who are interested that are going to find that information. And really, if you think about it, in a room of 30 people, maybe only 5 of them are going to go search, how do I vote for people? Who do I vote for? Who do I figure out who to vote for? So I feel like if you put it in front of us and made something practical, it would be like both of those things would help.
I definitely agree with having a practical approach. I feel like when we have an outside party come in, advertising what's going on and where we can explore more information, it really helps those who don't know about it, but then also the people who want to be more involved, guiding them where to go to find out more about it.
All right, look, thank you all. You have all been so helpful to this committee, and from both of us, we really want to commend the work you're obviously doing in your local community as well, because you are clearly really passionate about it and really showing young people in your community how to get involved and how they can take on these types of representative roles. So it's fantastic to have had you all here and to have you share this information with the committee. I now declare this meeting closed. The committee is adjourned until 7th of August.